So fairly quick video today. As you know from the last video, the front right brake was rattling, and it has been for a little while. The noise you're hearing when you're riding is this. Now I'm going to try and explain this to people so they understand. Pistons here, these are the pistons in there on the left. You can just see them near my thumb. Now if they don't come out enough to squash the pads together, then they're sitting loose. Now if this was a single caliper bike and it didn't have the other side, you'd lose a lot of your braking. However, this bike felt normal because a lot of the braking was still happening, most of which was from the other side. So we do need to, I have already had these off and cleaned them. You can see that they've been greased. What I didn't like was, I'm going to try and show you this on camera, sorry, let me angle you, is that even when they were in tight, the play down here was still rattling. So that's why I bought new pads to throw in there. So that's kind of where we're at today. Now these bolts here, I've WD-40'd it big time because they can be a right pain to get out. If you ever can't get it out, this bolt, then your options are to, spray it for a couple of days with WD-40 and then get a pliers on the inside on there and basically twist it around. What you don't want to do though, be very careful, you don't want to ruin the bar. So you need to be tight enough to spin it, but you don't want to go too nuts, if that makes sense. Once these old pads are out, I'll be cleaning the pistons, pushing them back in, inserting the new pads, greasing this pin this time. That's the bit people forget to do, they don't put grease in there, and then it's just hard to do next time. So I'll be greasing it properly this time, and then the bike should go back to where it was. There's no reason why it wouldn't then be working just as well. I might need to take the lid off depending on how full the fluid is, otherwise pushing these pads back won't work. If the fluid's topped up too much, we might need to suck out some fluid so that the fluid can back off enough to put the new pads in. So I'm going to work on this screw a little bit off camera, and I'll come back to you when I've got some sort of resolve. So the pin's loose now. We find a nice angle. Pin's loose, that will come out. Brake pads will drop out. Definitely need to put some grease on that, and that's just a retaining pin at this stage, so we put some more WD. Now don't worry about where the WD is going at the moment, because I'm going to thoroughly clean the brake caliper with brake cleaner before I put new pads anywhere near it. So I'm going to do still quite a bit of work on it, and then look at cleaning it up properly before the new pads go anywhere near. So that's good. Just looking at the discs to check if discs are okay, give them a wobble. They shouldn't have any movement. But to check the thickness of the discs, you check for a lip. So you run your finger, is there any lip? Now there's no lip on this one at all. That means they're fairly new, and that's great. If you have a huge lip, then it kind of messes with your brake. Sometimes the new brake pads wear up against that lip and it just gets a bit messy. These have no lip at all, so they're fairly new, so that's good to know. So I'm going to pull out this pin now using an Allen key. I'm going to let the WD soak in a bit, and these pads will then just drop out. So I'm going to show you a top tip for today. You see the Allen keys on the pin there? The actual pin itself was so seized in. It just wasn't greased before, which it always should be. It should be greased for the next person or the next change. Anyway, what you do is you get your Allen key in, make sure it's fully seated, and you get a long bar like this one. Slip that over the Allen key, and then you've got a huge area to work the bolts out. So there's a tip there, you buy them bars from Wix for like £6 and you can keep it in your garage forever. So this is now loose. What I did was I bolted the caliper back on so that there was stability. No point trying to do it in your hand. You may as well get it stable. So at this point I'm just going to drop these pads. Once this pin comes out, the pads will drop, and then I will clean the pistons, grease them, make sure they push back properly, and throw in the new pads. That should all work fine. Before I do all of that and I've done all my work on the pistons, I'll be thoroughly cleaning with brake cleaner to make sure there's no grease anywhere near it. So that's the next step. These pads out, the pistons cleaned, pistons pushed back, new cleaned, everything cleaned, and then the new pads go in. So this is where we are at this stage. The pistons were cleaned and pushed back and very slightly greased. You can't grease them too much. The retaining pin here just in front of you was greased, not on the area you can see, but within the screw sides, so that the next time it needs doing, it will be fine. The pads are not rattling, which is exactly how they should be. The top mount here should push in and out, which it does. That's greased and fine and ready to go. So this bike, you know, ultimately is ready to go. What I need to do is push this back onto the disc, get it bolted up, get the front brake pumped, and there's no air out of this because I didn't take any of the fuel lines off at all, or I didn't take the pistons out. So there's no air in the system. It should go completely back to normal. So all you're going to see now is me push this back on, get it all nipped up, and then I'll be taking this bike for a test ride. So we're at this stage, the caliper's back on, definitely no rattling, although the test drive will make that clear. Pump the front brake a few times. The outside, as in this piston and caliper, needs to re-engage. That's rock solid, so that's already re-engaged. And that's it, that should stop perfectly. I cleaned everything. You cannot have any grease on the discs or on the pads anywhere near, or it ruins it. Be very careful with your hands. Ideally clean your hands. I used a CV grease for some of it. Make sure that grease goes nowhere near the pads. So I used a tiny bit within the screw here and on the inside. I used a WD on the caliper pistons, and I cleaned them with a rag and pushed them back in. Don't put the CV grease anywhere near the pads or the discs, because that just won't end well. So I'm going to go for a test ride and hopefully come back and it's all done and dusted. I'll have a very quick look at the clutch. The clutch is great, it works perfectly. I just think the biting point's a bit high, so I want to adjust it a bit lower. So what I'll be looking for on this test run is obviously any of the juddering, which won't happen. Making sure it brakes properly, making sure it all feels right, and then it will take roughly 100 miles to wear these pads in, but that won't matter because it's got the caliper on the other side anyway. So I'm going to go for a quick test ride. Clutch is now adjusted, biting point's much lower, that's perfect. Quick test ride number 2. Perfect. Let me show you exactly what I did there. When I got the bike, this was fully adjusted out, okay? So it was maxed out. Now what that did, this is for quick fine adjustment of the clutch. This is for if you go on a track day, or if you feel like your clutch hasn't been adjusted properly and you need some quick adjustment, you do it up here. The real adjustment of a clutch is done down here. Now this was all the way in, so we need the main adjustment to be done here and the fine tuning to be done up there. So this is now set at the perfect place. The biting point's perfect. You put the rubber back down just to protect it all, and that's great. And then up here, this should be practically all the way in, which it is. And then you've got fine adjustment up here for the next year or two in regards to the clutch. Now don't get me wrong, if you ever go to see a bike and this is fully adjusted out and this is fully adjusted up, then you are very close to a new very close to needing a new clutch, at least a new set of plates. So, you know, always worth checking, but on this occasion there's loads of adjustment left, there's loads of clutch left, and the bike feels already a million times better. The rattling from the thingy's gone, but there is a bit of a rattle here from the tank. It's when you go over a bump. Now normally you have rubber grommets. Normally you have rubber grommets in there, so I'd quite like to figure out what's going on in there, just because it can be an annoying noise. So I'm gonna have a little look at that. Again, it's never anything dangerous. I wouldn't sell the bike or get rid of it. It's more of an annoyance, so I'm gonna see if I can work that out. Third and final test run. I believe everything's sorted now. The knocking was coming from the tank. Basically under the front of the tanks there's normally a rubber bush, and that stops vibrations, basically making the noise we were hearing, the kind of chinking. So I've had to kind of fabricate one that will be fine, but yeah, if it ever goes wrong I know exactly what to do. It takes me 2 minutes to put a new one on, but I believe this is fine. So I'm going to take it out, do one last run. It's getting chilly now, so I want to wrap up. So it's better. It is just literally this. It's fine. It's fine. There's always going to be a tiny bit of clanking on an older bike, so it's nothing to worry about. It was pretty much gone there. But if it did come back, then the new owner can bring it back, and I'll do a more permanent solution. I can make something out of silicone, for example, or glue down a different kind of rubber. That's fine. This is just a temporary repair for now, which should just, you know, last long enough anyway. But this bike's ready. The clutch biting point is so much nicer. I'm really glad I did that. It just, oh my god, it just changes the bike. It changes the dynamics of using the bike, you know. When the clutch is out too far, it hurts your hand, and you worry about your clutch plates and this and that and slipping, and it's good to have peace of mind that that's not the issue and that's not what's happening. So here's the bike. This might be the last video for it because someone's interested. It is a great bike. I'm very, very happy to keep this one if it doesn't sell. The price is between 11 and 12. I wouldn't necessarily take a penny less than 11 at this stage. I like it too much, I'll keep it, I'll use it. But yeah, lovely, stunning bike. Now let's hope it sells, because someone will get an amazing bike.